to you from Little Rock, Arkansas. Welcome to Sips on the Rock with Legacy Wine and Spirits. Join hosts and store owners Johnny Akins and David Bevins, along with product expert extraordinaire Jake Dell, as we chat about booze, news, and other happenings in the wide world of wine and spirits. Now, let's get to sipping.
Boom, here we are.
Hello.
Welcome back, folks. Jake and I are minus Johnny today.
We miss him.
We miss
Dearly.
Johnny. Yeah, I think that he's probably already at the airport waiting on a plane, ready to get out of town.
Right before y'all's post-holiday trip.
So ready.
So since Johnny's gone, we thought we'd talk about beer.
It's more, actually, we could spend an episode per style. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Some multiple episodes.
right.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. So much about beer. But today, we're going to tell you everything you need to know in 30 minutes.
yeah. We got some notes. We're going to talk about a bunch of stuff. Because we went through the holidays and talked about so many cordials and liqueurs and sparkling wines for New Year's and stuff. And now let's talk beer.
Well, yeah, and because it's so vast, I mean, there's no way we could possibly cover even
Yeah.
a pinhead
Yeah.
of the world of beer. Let's start. Like, what is craft beer? I mean, what the difference between micro? I mean,
Right. Those are words we use to kind of differentiate from the big boys and the not big boys, because the lines have been blurred in the last few years. The Craft Brewers Association is now kind of the governing body that will rule on the technicalities of being a craft brewery, because it's pretty hard to call Sam Adams a micro brewery. They're obviously not. They're still brewing craft beer. They're not brewing macro lagers, as we like to call your Bud Lights and Coors Lights. They're brewing cool styles, but they're in every state. They dwarf, every other brewery would still be in that definition. Sierra Nevada, the same kind of way.
right.
New Belgium. So macro versus micro is kind of the shorthand for what's, your light kind of flavorless stuff. The macro lagers versus micro. Your craft beers.
Does that happen when they get bought out by a conglomerate? Or
I guess, again, that's where the water's still murky, because Goose Island is making craft beer, but they're owned by the parent company of Budweiser, AB InBev. So they're not, what I would consider a true. And then you can define it by, are they independently owned,
Right.
versus some faceless corporation. There's many ways you can kind of draw the lines, but it's almost like it when you're having it, if it's a craft beer or not a craft beer.
it's not Bud or Miller Lite.
Right. Right. And not that we're trashing those, because, boy, I love to keep some PBRs or hams in my fridge. Sometimes you don't want to obsess over what this beer, subtle tasting notes are.
Well,
Just
and
something
there's a time and a place for it all.
Sure.
So you're out at a restaurant that doesn't have a good selection. All you're left with is the macros to choose from.
Right.
Or, it's the end of the night. You're not ready for another 11%
Yeah.
beer.
So want something light, but want to keep the party going. Yeah.
Right. Well, cool. That kind of sums up micro versus macro.
Yeah.
But even within micro, you've got, regional, you've got local, hyper local.
Right. Again, the ones I mentioned are, we're nationwide, and you have some that are distributed into maybe 15 or 20 states that are close enough for them to still truck their beer and keep it fresh and not have it sitting in a warehouse literally across the country. And then, like you said, there are local breweries that are available in your whole home state. New Glarus Spotted Cow, very famous beer if you're in the beer game, but you can only buy it in Wisconsin because they sell it all in Wisconsin. People ask, why don't you carry that here? We can't get it. They don't need to send it to Arkansas because they sell it all in Wisconsin. And then you have, super hyper local stuff that might only be available literally at that brewery.
Right.
Yeah.
Just on that block.
You got to go to that brewery to drink their beer. Yeah. And that has to do with, production amounts and your brewing system and how much beer you can brew.
Right. Yeah. And that's, also a tourism drive, they keep it limited. So you've got to go to the
source
brew pub.
Yeah.
But cool stuff. So what is this one?
So while we're talking beer, we have a Northwest Pale Ale from Deschutes called Red Chair. It's a limited release. You see that a lot in the beer world, stuff that beers that they'll brew one time a year or maybe one time ever, because breweries will have what they their core lineup that they brew year round. And then brewing is an art. You got to give brewers some creativity, maybe try something new because they want to drink it themselves, because they want to do a style that people are clamoring for, or just to try something new and see if it sticks, see if people like it. Brewery like Deschutes, they're out of Bend, Oregon. They've been around a long time. Finally entered the Arkansas market a couple years ago, when they were one that we get people from out of state, wonder, why don't y'all have Deschutes? It's available everywhere else. Arkansas is usually at the bottom of the totem pole.
Right. There are a lot of places it takes to, a lot of brewers, distillers, wineries, it takes a while to trickle on down into Arkansas.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
We're a small market. It is what it is, It's even that, it's pretty much like Central Arkansas, Northwest Arkansas, and maybe counting the Texarkana area, I don't know, as like markets for craft beer. Hot Springs, maybe. Pretty much Hot Springs is pretty much the Little Rock metro area, and then Northwest Arkansas, Fayetteville, Rogers are the big areas in Arkansas. But there's good beer available everywhere. Hopefully, you don't have to drive too far. Even if you're in the boonies, you got a liquor store somewhat close enough to you that'll order an IPA for you if that's what you want to drink. I would hope that any store did, and
hope that you get it fresh.
Right. I did figure we would kind of talk about label stuff today, and being able to decipher some stuff on a beer label, and that's a perfect segue. Nowadays, you're seeing a lot of brewers put on either a best by date or a brewed on date.
Right. And I like the brewed on.
I like the brewed on date because that lets me make my own decision. It's not as regulated as food, where it's like, oh my God, if you have this after a certain date, it's going to make you sick. That beer is kept, in an environment that should, again, some styles more so than others, should keep it until you're ready to drink it to a certain extent. Flavors start falling off, whatever. But again, there's no oxygen in there that is anything that's gonna turn it into like mold or poison or something.
Poison.
So the best by date is usually, you'll see when a brewer suggests, hey, this is gonna be the freshest. You want to drink this before this date, but if you get a brewed on date, the educated customer can know, yeah, this is an IPA. I want to drink it as fresh as possible. Or if it's a stout that I'm going to cellar, don't tell me when to drink it by. I'll drink it when I'm ready.
Right. Yeah. It all depends on the style.
Right.
And of course, if you are cellaring something like that, it depends on the conditions, just like a wine, you want it dark and cool.
Right. Yep. No temperature fluctuations is big. You don't want it going hot, cold, hot, cold. Obviously, you don't want it to ever get really hot, period. And I know we talked about that.
Right.
The episode Leo was on. Oxygen and extreme heat are really, really bad. Light oxygen and extreme heat are really bad for beer.
Well, and that's why a lot of people are going to cans.
Yep.
Don't see a lot of craft in bottles much anymore. But that it occurred to me, Prairie is one of those weird breweries that's still doing can and bottles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've been fighting the good fight about cans for a long time. We prefer cans. Cans, no light gets in. Even these brown bottles, some ultraviolet, in a spectrum of the ultraviolet light is getting through there. That's why they'll have labels. And Sam Adams, their 6-pack holders, they go like all the way up to here. Mm-hmm. They go higher than because they want less light in there. But to that point, I'm sure everybody would flip a switch and go to cans if they could, but brewers like New Belgium and Sam Adams, they have for years and millions of dollars invested into bottling lines and production and then just raw materials and contracts they have with glass producers. I'm sure that they can't just immediately switch to cans, but you are seeing more and more beers come in cans. And we've had customers argue with us that, oh, well, out of the bottle, it tastes better. I don't want it tasting like a can. And that's just an old wives' tale too. I promise if I poured the same beer out of a bottle in a can and showed it to you in a glass, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Nowadays, aluminum cans are lined with this super thin polymer that covers up any of that metallic,
right?
But that's more for, again, sanitary issues than it is like we're keeping the aluminum taste out of your beer, because you just can't tell. You might be smelling the top of the can when you're chugging it out of a can, but same kind of thing. We like to pour our beer in a glass.
Right.
There is an optimal drinking experience without being snooty about it. I don't turn my nose up if somebody hands me a beer in a can. I don't say, oh my God, get me a glass. I love beer out of a can. I love beer out of a bottle. But if I'm at home and I have a good beer, man, why would you not want to open it, pour it into a glass that lets more of the aromas out? Especially you pour it with a little bit of vigor, it opens up some of the carbonation. It's not going to all sit in your stomach and make you full. But then you can smell more of it. It's just a better experience.
Well, it's all about the experience. And it does. You get those, I say odors. That's not
aromas.
A great aromas.
Yeah.
That's a much better word. You get the aromas that you don't get, out of a bottle or a can.
Right.
Just like a wine.
Anything. Why would you want to drink wine straight out of the bottle? I guess if you're only trying to get drunk, but then might as well just.
And there's glassware specific for each style of beer. In which, speaking of styles of beers, there are as many styles of beer as there are varietals in wine. I mean, it's and then we've spoken about this.
I wonder
before.
what the number would be if it's because there's a lot of different grape varietals, but man, there's a ton of beer styles. I wonder what the numbers are. It's in the multiple hundreds for each.
Oh yeah,
easily. So
craziness, and it like we said, we could spend an episode per style, and then some.
Yeah,
but
I'm sure we will have some more just beer episodes coming up.
Some of y'all in the know might know Jake is a Cicerone. The Cicerone is the beer education program, similar to unto the sommelier program for wine. It is essentially a beer sommelier.
It is. I mean, it's the only one of its kind out there. Definitely the biggest and most respected. They do testing all around the country. There's a network of Cicerones. There's different levels: certified beer server, certified Cicerone. Now there's even an advanced Cicerone before you get to master Cicerone.
Uh-oh.
And that is about like a master somm. There's not that many in the entire world.
Are you going to go for it?
I don't know.
Man, you can do it. I've got faith in you. I'm going to do my beer server.
That's David's New Year's resolution. Says he's going to take the certified beer server and then go for Cicerone. And I can't wait to help him study.
That's the fun part.
Yeah.
I remember when you and Jimmy Bubbles were studying for y'all's exams.
Yeah.
And lots of cool stuff. You get the little tasting or smelling kits and all that.
Yeah, I know I've touched on it. Part of the test is off flavors for, faults in the brewing process, if a beer's oxidized or, stuff like that. They have kits they'll send you where you can just dump a little powder into you usually want to use a really light kind of flavorless macro lager to really differentiate, what the signifiers are, the signs that to go off in your head like, hey, that beer has got diacetyl in it, and it was really fun to do that because you can do that on the cheap thanks to cicerone.org without having to go find old beer, bad beer, subject yourself to that.
Well, that's cool. And that's, way over the majority of people's heads.
But also
even a lot of the beer geeks aren't to that level.
Right. Yeah. And, home brewers, if you're coming from a home brewing background, you get a leg up on people because you're that familiar with the brewing process, and maybe you've screwed up a few batches of beer and kind of remember what that's like.
You learned by mistakes.
Right.
Trial and error.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm excited about that. Getting to learn more about beer and get a little accreditation to my name.
Yeah. It's a nice little feather in your cap. And
so speaking of all these different styles of beers, and you're trying stuff here, there, wherever, in bars, in package stores, there's apps out there. You can kind of track your progress. You can look up beers, learn about them, learn about different styles, see their ratings. This year's as good as last year's?
Yeah.
All that
different
stuff.
Vintages. Yeah. Our favorite is Untapped. It's Untapped without an E at the end, UNTAPPD. And it's basically social media for beer. All the good parts of social media and none of the bad parts. You get a beer you're trying for the first time. You take a picture of it in your cool glass and
No bubbles.
They're right. Then you search it on there and you'll check it in, and it'll, you can write a little description if you want, tasting notes if you want, and then it has the pre-made like tasting notes that you might, if you're having trouble coming up with putting your finger on a flavor, it has a big list. Oh, you're tasting a little orange, a little piney, note, and you can put where you drink it, and it keeps track, and you have it's like Instagram, Facebook, and all wrapped into one, but just centered around beer. You can cheers to your friends on there. Obviously, you have a friends list that you see all the beers your friends are drinking, and you can cheers them, and you can comment on their beers, and you can, like you said, see scores. You can see how highly rated that beer is compared to all the other users on Untappd, and it's cool. It's fun to kind of take a look back memory lane sometimes in that app. And
it also good for memory tracking. You see what you've had, what you haven't. And
then, like you were saying,
if it's anything like you and I, we try so many in a month or a year. Right.
It's impossible to just be able to recall them all.
Yeah, no, especially nuanced notes on them.
Yeah.
So that's cool. And I said beer geeks earlier, and that's a loving term,
right? Not a pejorative
within that community.
We are beer geeks. We try not to be too snobby about it. That's the thing with any industry, any hobby, really. I mean, I like to enjoy it. I like to do what I like. I don't like to lord over people that, oh, you don't drink it like I drink it. Like, oh, then you're doing it wrong. Like, I'll offer some tips.
Right. There's no right and wrong in how you enjoy something.
Right.
Don't if you want it out of the can, have it out of the can.
Right. I'll offer you the suggestion that you might like it better out of a glass, and who knows? Try it, maybe. If not, cool. At least you tried something new.
A lot of it's, they just hadn't been exposed to it.
Right. People can get stuck in their ways with anything, and beer combines food and art and all sorts of things. So people can be protective of their own ways. Yeah. And
that's right.
Yeah. Not want to change.
It's fun. Back when we had the Growler Bar, you'd taste people on different beers, beer styles. They're like, oh, well, I'm not a beer drinker.
Right.
Like, well, just try this. If you're coming off of coming from a Sauvignon Blanc palate, there is a beer out there that you would enjoy. If you're coming off of a whiskey palate, anything.
Right.
There is a beer to match your likes.
I would think so. And that's what we kind of pride ourselves on being able to do, point you in the right direction, so you're not having to make too many mistakes along the way.
Right.
But, as much as it is steering you towards something you might like, steering you away from stuff you won't like.
Say you like pineapple and marshmallow. I mean, like, that's a new one we just got in. Prairie makes really good beers. That's a regional. They're over in Oklahoma City, so it's not in all 50 states, but we're lucky enough to get it here.
They're pretty widely distributed these days too. I know there was a while some other people in beer meccas couldn't get it, but they're pretty far and wide these days. We like Prairie stuff.
They make some really good stuff. Really good with the stouts, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Not the biggest sour fan, but I've had some that I can tolerate.
I know I did say I was going to talk a little bit about label stuff, and then we just got off on a tangent. Surprise, surprise. If ABV is self-explanatory. If you just don't know the abbreviation, it's alcohol by volume. The alcohol percent is going to be, we talked about dates. If you see the letters IBU stands for?
The bitter unit.
This will be on the test, International Bitterness Unit. Those are going to come, they're going to be more important on hoppy beers. It's going to measure the level of perceived bitterness. Again, there's lots of gray areas when we're talking about. The higher IBUs does not always mean it's bitter, but it's going to be a really, really good indicator. Hops are where beer gets bitterness. Now, when the hops are added in the brewing process, are going to add much more, much less bitterness to the beer. You add them at the very beginning, the very end, you add certain kinds. It's not going to affect the bitterness because the little oils, the alpha oils inside of hops, they need time in the brewing process and heat really to dissipate in there. And that's what gives beer its bitterness. When you have IPAs, if you're only used to IPAs being bitter. Old school West Coast style, English style, European style IPAs are usually high in bitterness. I like that. Not all the time. I like IPAs that aren't super bitter, but the higher IBUs you see, the more bitter it's going to be. You'd like to say on a scale of 100, because that's really what it used to be, but they have broken through, and now you'll see some that are higher than 100. I don't know what it technically goes up to. I know it doesn't get to 200. Back in the days when we opened was kind of the bitterness wars, as it were, because brewers were trying to outdo each other on who can make the bitterest beer.
Right.
And I know I had one from this brewery we can't even get anymore. It was 136, 140.
Good Lord.
And some of those Green Flash pallet wreckers,
Right,
those were up
yeah.
at 120.
Wow. Yeah.
Super bitter. That you wouldn't call the most refreshing, but really interesting, really good. And again, different strokes, different folks. Some people love them, some people don't. But that's what that's going to mean when you see it on there. I don't know of any other codes that I can until we start talking about styles. So,
well, what about the independent brewers?
Oh yeah, you'll see this cool little upside down beer bottle. And it says Brewers Association Independent Craft Certified. And that's kind of what we were talking about earlier. I think Sam Adams really fought to get that on theirs because they're so big that they didn't qualify, and they kind of changed the rules a little bit for them to be a part of it. But if you see that, you know that it is independently owned and is not owned by some company that doesn't even care about beer. They just bought it to make money.
Right.
So
there's add to the portfolio.
Right.
So I laid out some of my favorites. I went downstairs. You were busy at your desk working away, as you do so often. So I went and grabbed some styles. Surprise, surprise, it's some of my favorites.
Yeah.
The sequence I love. It's kind of like a tart, limey, salty.
It is a sour, but it's one of those lighter end sours where it's not super sour candy type of stuff.
Right.
It's just a little tartness, like you said.
So good in the summertime when it's hot outside.
Yep. That style, Sequench, is a Goza, right? They used to say it on there, but it's an old...
It's a session sour now,
right,
is what they call it.
Maybe that was confusing people. Maybe they just didn't want to put it on there. Yeah. It's an old German style where they would add salt to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Delicious stuff.
So it's a little tart, little salty, so that kind of makes you want another sip. And then especially paired with citrus, you can start thinking that's kind of margarita flavor combinations.
And who doesn't love a salty tart?
Right.
KBS, I've talked about many times. This is the Maple Mackinac. I'm surprised this is still around.
Not everybody loves it as much as you.
Golly, I just love that dang beer.
This one, I want to hear your thoughts on this. Deschutes, it feels like Celebration Light.
It kind of does. I mean, it's got it doesn't have that piney hop, but I mean, I definitely kind of get that lighter ale.
It feels like there's
almost like lagerish.
Yeah. It feels like there's some red malt in there too.
Yeah.
To kind of give that caramely malt backbone under there.
Yeah. You definitely taste the malt more so than the hops in this one.
It's bundled up beside this citrusy smooth ale that's an insider's ride to fresh thrills. I guess one more thing. We talk about bottle conditioning right quick and get really scientific, but it says on here, live yeast added to the bottle allows this beer to age gracefully and stay fresher longer, keep bottles upright and away from light and heat. So that last phrase echoes what we were saying about staying away from light and heat. But the interesting thing about putting live yeast in there, that was an old, I want to say it was done a lot in the old Belgian beers, but really a lot in old styles, period. Because once you bottle it, especially back then before, technology was able to kind of get to where you can bottle or can something with like oxygen in there down in the single digit parts per million. You can get almost all oxygen out. It used to be really hard back in the day. You put a cap on something, you could spray gas in there. I don't know, how old bottling lines would work. But if you put some live yeast in there, right, it's going to eat up any more sugars that are left in there. Again, the yeast is not going to stay alive forever. It's eventually going to die when it runs out of stuff to eat and turn into alcohol. But it also helps get rid of any leftover oxygen that's in there. So that goes to what they're saying of being able to stay fresher longer.
Well, so would that up the ABV?
Again, if there's not like extra residual sugars purposely left over in there,
Right.
there's not going to be much for it to do. So maybe in like mega
Minuscule,
minute,
yeah.
quantities.
Interesting. It says store upright. That's kind of a new one. I guess I'm not familiar with. the importance.
Counterintuitive to wine, because I mean there's not a cork there that you need to get keep wet, so it does its job. I don't even necessarily know why they said that. Probably because anything that might settle over time from the live yeast is going to fall down to the bottom of the bottle. That's got to be it. I don't know why.
And you wouldn't want it in your glass.
So basically, it would make the beer look funky,
Right.
and that's why they're saying it. So somebody who doesn't know what's happening, you keep it stored on its side, and it has some of that yeast and the dregs that are going to get left over stuck to the side of the bottle. Then you pour it, you're going to see chunks in your beer, and you're going to go, oh, gross. That's not going
Right.
to taste good. Whereas
Not that it affects the beer.
it won't really affect the beer other than, maybe texturally. You might feel some when you take a sip. And especially, I mean, some beers are going to have more. Some of those old 750s, you keep them around for long enough, you will see some chunky
Right.
lambics that age for a long time. It's more for presentation's sake and a textural, because it can add a creamy quality to it. And I've had Saisons where I've poured half of the bottle. It is just absolutely crystal clear yellow. You can see it shining bright. And then if you give the rest of the bottle a swirl and really hold it upside down and pour it down, it looks like a hazy IPA. And I like that because it's almost like you get two different drinking experiences out of one bottle. Cool. And some beers I like a little more body, especially in my Saison. I kind of like something a little.
Well, and wheats, you kind of pour and then give a swirl. And
that was a big thing on the Shock Top bottle, Blue Moon bottle way back when. Yeah, it says, swirl that last little bit. And that's to kind of reintegrate the chunks so they're not staying as chunks and kind of just clouds up the whole beer. Some people like it, some people don't. It's kind of the mantra.
Well,
today.
Like I said, there's no right and wrong way to enjoy what you enjoy. Just enjoy in moderation.
Temperature too. We can talk about that for just a hot second here. Stouts, I don't like those to be mega ice cold because you're going to see more flavors open up as it warms up. Once you get it in a glass, temperature will affect it in a cool way, a good way. A stout, if you sip on it for 30 minutes as it warms to room temperature, we're not talking again getting it hot, but as it goes from fridge temp to room temp, you're going to see more flavors. Just it's science. It's going to happen. They're going to get released because of the temperature change. And some people like beer 31 degrees in a frosted mug where it's forming ice crystals on the top. And again, I've been over to people's houses who are like, here, I know you'll want this. And like, I'm like, cool, that's fine. It's your place. You want to serve it like that? Like, I don't like my beer to be like so ice cold, because the colder it is, the less flavor, the harder it is to taste what's going on.
Well, that's the big secret about masking bad tasting beer.
Macro lagers, they're going to want them served at Twin Peaks at 29 degrees because you're not there to really study what's going on in the glass. You want it cold, you want to drink it fast, with your hot wings, and just not worry about really what it's tasting like. And that's cool, do that. Again, I like PBR cold because I already know what it tastes like.
Right.
But I don't like it to be so cold that it starts turning into a slushy.
Even on a hot day,
Even on a hot day.
You want to be able to enjoy the taste. And that's a lot of our world, it's not just drinking to get smashed. It's like actually enjoying what is rolling across your palate.
Yeah. Dissecting.
Yeah.
Kind of just paying attention to it.
If you get a buzz, you get a buzz.
Right. It's an added benefit. But yeah, we're not saying everybody needs to keep a journal or log every beer on Untappd. I have Untappd. I use it pretty regularly. I don't put every beer I drink on there. I put all the special beers I drink on there again, because I want to be able to remember them. And, again, 5 years down the line, if I don't even remember if I've had it, kind of when I go to check it in, oh, I did have one of those way back when.
And I liked it 5 years ago, but I didn't today.
Right.
That happens.
So many factors about where you're drinking it, and again, out of the vessel, and the temperature it's served, and how old it is, and the company you're around. Yeah. the food you're eating. You know, I mean, putting it with different foods obviously can go a long way.
That itself could be a whole nother episode, just talking about beer pairings.
That was a section on the Cicerone test. Was they gave you a dish with all the different spices and sauces, and then a beer. I think you have to pick the beer. It's like, here's the dish. What beer would you pair? And then you have to list a bunch of different ways that it pairs and reasons why those are good, why your choice was good. You know, being able to back up your pretty much.
You can't just, throw a dart, pick something.
Right. Like if you really, I guess we're good with words, they're trying to avoid just being able to use any beer for any dish, which you can drink whatever beer you want with whatever that you have. But there are flavor, things in the flavor world that typically go together.
Right. Well,
stouts and chocolate candy, and we've talked about spicy
IPAs
foods.
And spicy.
Yeah. Saisons with, kind of white meat stuff and white sauces I love. There's a whole nother episode there.
Right. Yeah. We'll get to that for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
is that it already?
We're over. I mean, just tip of the iceberg stuff here. I mean, we could go on and on and on. Don't threaten us to sit here and drink and talk beer all day.
Yeah. I know we did talk about being able to sample at the bar we used to have here, but I've said it before. That's why variety packs are great these days. And any Pick 6 Wall worth its salt, you'll be able to just try one without having to spend $10 on a beer you might hate. Surely you can find a place, even if it's not us, that you could try one at a time, or any good bar will let you have a little taster sample,
Right. And
Flying Saucer always does that. If you're, I've never heard of that. Hey, here, have a little
Saucer obviously has a huge assortment. 4-Quarter over in Argenta has got a terrific beer assortment.
Yep.
Yeah. Shout out.
So I guess that's what I'm trying to end on is try new things.
Try new things. It's a new year. Try new things.
Yeah. Don't limit yourself with a resolution.
Right. Try to expand yourself with your resolutions. All right, folks. Thanks for joining us.
That was fun.
That was fun.
I talked a lot.
A lot to say about beer.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thank y'all very much. Y'all keep on sipping.
Remember to subscribe to our podcast, Sips on the Rock, and like us on all the socials to keep up with what's new in the wide world of alcohol. Shop LegacyLR.com for curbside pickup or local delivery. Remember, for better service and better selection, shop local. Please enjoy responsibly. Cheers.